So one other question I wanted to bring up is this is the second movie in a month that gets completely rejected by audiences. Right? First we had Borderlands a few weeks ago, and now we have this. One thing that Borderlands and The Crow have in common is that they are adaptations of older things that people like, and they are low quality, but then they get a backlash that I think is way out of proportion to what the quality actually warrants. Like both of them I think are bad, but they are not the worst thing ever. They're kind of like normal amounts of bad. Where if you really like Borderlands or The Crow, I can see being disappointed or being upset that it's not what you imagined it to be or something. That's totally fair. But the discourse is these are the worst things ever, and like this needs to crash and burn. This is an outrage. This is an insult to the fans. It happened twice in 1 month. What's that about?
It seems like it's a rejection of some of the certain things that are becoming like standard or status quo in like Hollywood and some of the movies that we're getting, in terms of like the low quality writing that we're getting in a lot of movies, and then it like it. I mean, it's not the first time like this has happened. Like when people are like heavily invested in something. I mean, you had like the whole like backlash to like season 8 of Game of Thrones and stuff, and it's just like people have like high expectations. People like hold these things like really dear to their heart, and like they just don't want to see it just like cheapened or taken for granted. And I just feel like we're just at a point where maybe it's happened one too many times. Everyone's now at a point where like anytime like something goes wrong, it just seems like people have like kind of like reached a certain point or like certain like threshold of like shit that they've taken. And it's like now that every time like something comes that doesn't hit the bar or like doesn't like even like remotely come close to what people are expecting, then like it just hits the fan and people like really reject it, or like really like are like outspoken for the dislike of it. And I hear it.
I mean, I was kind of at that point 5 years ago, right? With Game of Thrones, with the DCEU, where for a long time I was really distraught at how terrible these things were and how much wasted opportunity there was. And you could imagine what could have been if these things had been handled properly and all of these things, right? Mm-hmm. But that was 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, that effect was much less pronounced. Like people hated on these movies, and these things still made money, right? Or at least made a decent amount of money. And this just these two things just completely crash and burn. And it's pretty unanimous. It's not like there's two factions. One of them thinks The Crow is the best thing ever, and one of them thinks it's the worst thing ever, and they hate each other on the internet. Right? It's not that. That is not happening. There don't seem to be many defenders of either Borderlands or The Crow. And so like everybody seems to be united in their hatred for, or at least rejection of these things.
I don't think that these two projects had the same goodwill that some of the Marvel movies or like some of the other more established franchise have had, because people revolted about season 8 of Game of Thrones, but there's people that would defend it would be people that have seen 7 seasons of Game of Thrones previously and have like a goodwill towards it. Whereas like, and again, like the Marvel movies, even I to an extent can look past some of the issues with with a lot of the Marvel movies like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania or whatever, because of like the goodwill and because of like the feelings I have for the franchise overall. And in a situation like Star Wars, where I feel like they've burnt out their goodwill by sort of kind of like producing bad content after bad content for too long a period, where now it's overwhelmingly negative on their side, which is why you get the reaction that you get to the Acolyte on their side of things. And you kind of like start to get some people that try to sort of do the same with like Marvel projects, with like She-Hulk and stuff like that, where they try to be a little bit too extreme on it. But I feel like it's more pronounced on these two latest projects. It's just because there isn't that goodwill behind it. It's sort of it's stuff that doesn't have, like for Borderlands, for example, the people love it. The people that love it because of the video games, not because of the movies. And if you then make a movie that completely changes everything and doesn't give the same feeling as sort of as the video games, you've already marginalized that audience on that side. And then of course, if it's not a good movie, then the actual like moviegoers and the critics aren't gonna like it either. It just seems like anything that's like new or like trying to establish a new franchise has to like almost try and play it safe and not take too many risks, or you have to really like knock it out of the park, or just be like a solid movie. Like you can't miss badly on your first attempt, because if there's people that have a love for like a different iteration of it, you're gonna find it very difficult to kind of get those people on side.
I agree with the idea that you have to get people on board first.
Mm.
And then if quality slips, then some people will stay on board no matter what. Yeah, so maybe if this had been Borderlands 4 or The Crow 4, then the discourse would have been different. Like if the first 3 were really good and then it started to go downhill or something.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's it. But it's not like people are rejecting franchises, right? Like the big successes of recent weeks are Deadpool and Alien Romulus, right? Which are very safe, high quality sequels, right? That make it easy to be excited about it and to find something to like.
Yeah.
And both of them know what their core audience likes, right? They like Deadpool and Alien respectively are very different things, but they have like a core appeal that these movies really get to and really deliver. And if you are on board with these things, then you get that from those two things. The same wasn't true from The Crow and Borderlands, so maybe that's just it. I'm just surprised by how complete and unanimous it is.